The New South Wales Premier has ruled out any plans to sell TAFE, but says the government is open to the private sector playing a bigger role. The state government has announced a review into the system as it considers introducing a HEC-style payment schedule for students. Let's go live now to Canberra. The Shadow Education Minister Tanya Plibersek joins us live now. Thanks so much for your time.
Good morning.
First of all, we'll get to Gladys Berejiklian in a moment, but you have been talking about this skills shortage for quite some time. What has led to it?
Well, $3 billion of cuts from the federal government to TAFE and training, and close to $1 billion of underspending. What we've seen under Scott Morrison is cuts to TAFE and training that have led to a national shortage of trades. Bricklayers, plumbers, electricians, automotive, hairdressing, bakers, and right across the board, right across the country, and a whole range of skills, we've seen this skills crisis worsen. Now, that comes at a time when we've got close to 2 million Australians who are unemployed or underemployed, and we've got 3/4 of businesses telling us that they can't find the skilled staff they need. So we've got funding cuts and skills shortages and high unemployment and underemployment. It's actually a crying shame. And we really, what we see is that under the last Labor government, numbers of apprentices and trainees never really dropped below around 400,000. Under this government, they've been hovering around 260 or 270,000. That's just not acceptable. It's pushing up the price of big infrastructure projects because we've got skills shortages, and it's preventing businesses from expanding. I'm doing a tour around Australia at the moment, 100 businesses in 100 days, talking to businesses, large, small, medium-sized, about their need for education and training, and they tell me all the time that they would expand if they could find the skilled staff.
Is it just about money though? I know you're doing this tour. What is the feedback you're getting other than funding? Is it the way that the education system has shaped the market, and do people simply just don't want to do some of these jobs?
No, I really don't believe that this is, you know, the government likes to trot out this job snob argument, and they say that people don't want to be apprentices anymore. That's not my experience from talking to students. It's not my experience of talking to parents. It's not my experience of talking to workers in, you know, mid-career who are thinking about changing the work they do. There is a strong demand for apprenticeships and traineeships. And there's a strong demand from employers to put people on with these skills. What we don't have is a system that's linking the people who want to do the work with the employers who have the work. And that really is a failing of the federal government. We've seen states step into the breach to some degree. We've got West Australia, Queensland, Victoria, all offering free TAFE of some description. The New South Wales government now has acknowledged that there's a serious problem with TAFE and training in New South Wales. What we don't have is a federal government committed to action. And in fact, you talk about, you know, is it just funding cuts? The government's not just cut funding, they've in addition to that, they've underspent by almost $1 billion. So there's programs that are designed to help apprentices and trainees that are so poorly designed that employers don't want to use them.
No.
And they're not reaching the people who want to do the traineeships.
Well, there is no endless pit of taxpayer funds, unfortunately. So is there a bigger role for the private sector to play, which has been flagged by Gladys Berejiklian?
Look, there's certainly a role to play for the private sector in vocational education and training, but what I wouldn't want to see is the explosion of dodgy providers that we saw a few years ago. There have to be high-quality private providers that are, properly supervised to make sure that they're delivering good quality training. And we need TAFE as the foundation of the system, because I can tell you what normally happens is TAFE are delivering the higher cost, machine intensive sort of courses, and then the private providers sort of cherry pick the less expensive to deliver courses that they can charge a lot of money for. Well, that's not a healthy training system for Australia. So we need to see big, strong public TAFE as the foundation for the system.
Domestic violence has rightly been back in the spotlight this week. Why is it such a silent killer? Why does it continue to be so? Well, I don't think that there's any lack of
community outrage or bipartisanship in, a wish to do better here. I really sincerely believe that all Australians have been shocked by the death of Hannah Clark and her children, and the death of so many other women and children at the hands of the men who are supposed to love and protect them. What is missing is, I think, a will to enact what we know has to change to protect women and their kids. We've had the Victorian Royal Commission, we've had the Quentin Bryce report in Queensland, we've had the Australian Law Reform Commission make 60 recommendations for changes. We've got parliamentary inquiry led by Graham Perrott in 2017. We had a COAG meeting in 2018. My own national plan on violence against women and their children that was developed at the beginning of the Rudd government. We know what we need to do. We keep asking, why didn't she leave? We should be asking, where would she go? We don't have enough.
Well, Pauline Hanson is a co-chair of another committee coming up very shortly, and she wants to look at the other side of this. What do you think?
Well, this is part of the problem. I think it's part of the problem, not part of the solution. This inquiry and the rhetoric that Pauline Hanson has been using is giving a megaphone to those groups in our society who say that women who leave violent relationships and take their children for their own protection out of violent homes are the cause of the violence that happens after they leave. We know the most dangerous time for a woman in a violent relationship is immediately after ending the relationship. I think giving a megaphone to the groups that say things like, men who have been driven too far, excuse this violent behaviour. This inquiry is all about giving a megaphone to those groups, and it turns my stomach. Our laws should always be designed to protect the best interests of children, the safety of children. And instead of that, Pauline Hanson is talking about the family law system as a way of men getting what they deserve. I think it misses the point entirely. We need to be looking for less conflict in our family law system, that's for sure. Children who have two parents who love them, when it's safe to be with both those parents, of course they should be. But where there is violence in a relationship, that violence should never, ever be excused or condoned with language like men who are driven too far. I know the men in my life would never, it would not matter what happened in our family, they would not act the way we saw with Hannah Clark and her children. So we've got to stop excusing this behaviour. We've got to invest in emergency accommodation for women and children who are fleeing. We need to continue to support the great change we've seen in our police force and our courts that has acknowledged domestic violence as a crime, that treats it as a crime. We need to continue to support that work. We do need to work with men who are violent to change their behaviour, and most of all, most importantly, from the time that children are little, we have to be saying to them that violence is never acceptable. It's never acceptable in personal relationships, that men don't control women, that men and women are equal, that little boys and little girls are equal. These messages have to start from a very early age so that we change behaviour forever.
Tanya Plibersek, thank you for your time.
Thank you.